everyone, and welcome back. It's SailGP Tiers. This is episode 2. We have 5 events through the 2025 season. I'm Lisa Diamond, and I'm joined once again by Stevie Morrison. Stevie, how's the season shaping up?
Oh, it's been a good one, hasn't it? 5 events in so far, 5 different winners. Unfortunately, I am sat here now because we're not in Rio because of all that drama that happened in San Francisco. So disappointing. The right call that there was an issue they found inside the wings. I look like I'm in sort of some kind of prison environment here. I'm in a SailGP prison because I've come up to SailGP Technologies to have a look. So yesterday I was looking around. There's so much going on here with the wings. There's boat 13 being built. There's beams being built. There's an oven big enough for a Darmanian family Christmas dinner and a half that cooks everything up in it, that's for sure. So it's an amazing facility up here. Not that I'm really showing it off right now, but yeah, it's been a great start to the season. So disappointed not to be in Rio, but yeah, it's pretty
so
cool to be able to look back. Yes.
So tough not to be in Rio. I know, we're disappointed. I'm sure everyone listening is disappointed, but I mean, so much has happened this season, as you said. The wing collapse in San Francisco was just, really shocking. We had a capsize in Sydney. We had Billy get injured in Auckland. I know we chatted after Auckland before the LA San Francisco leg, and on the tiers, we said a few people needed to get a win and needed to get a few results on the board. So plenty has happened this season so far. But yeah, gutted not to be in Rio, but very happy that we get to have a chat about sailing at least.
Well, Lisa, that is true. And for everyone listening, of course, they'll probably remember that Lisa's quite so disappointed because that's where she won her Olympic silver medal with Rio. And so she got that silver medal there and no doubt knows a few decent night spots that she was hoping to get back to. But anyway, there we go. Onwards and upwards. We're all going to have to, we've all got to deal with these types of things, haven't we? But yeah, it's good to catch up. It's been a really interesting start to the year. Yours, that's not fair to say yours, but the Australian team have of course looked pretty good, haven't they? They really come out of the season pretty strong, and we've got some different names for our tier groups, so maybe you can run us through that, Lisa, and the categories we're going to try and box people into.
Yeah, so let me give you a rundown of the tiers, and then we'll go dive in from the top down and tell you who's slotted in where. So we've got Dynasties only. Next up, we have positive momentum. Then we've got more questions and answers for some. The next one is hard lessons learned and pushing ahead. And finally, it's race by race, event by event. But to kick us off with the dynasties, I think it's Australia, which you've already touched on, and also Spain slotting in there. Obviously, champions last year in San Francisco, and then winning again in San Francisco was pretty special, pretty cool, full circle moment for them.
Yeah, amazing. I struggle with the powers that be a little bit on saying dynasties only and putting Spain in there. I think there is only one, and I've got to say that's the Australians. They're the ones that since season 1 have been dominant. They didn't get it done last year, but they were second. Do you know what I mean? In one 12-minute race, they came up second, and I think really they're the dynasty. The question would be, are Spain the next dynasty? I think I could fully get on board with that. I think the Spanish, and I don't know if producer Liam is in the background with the stats for us this tier podcast like he was last time, but I think the Spanish are probably still the youngest team in SailGP in terms of average age on board the boat. So, no offense to Tom, but he's got Draper in there, he's got Jason Kinley there. They like to think of themselves as young, but they're not really any spring chickens anymore. They've been around a while and had a lot of success, of course. But the Spanish are very young. And that performance in San Fran was good because there was a few questions, wasn't there? They hadn't had the most sort of electric start to season 5.
Yeah, I think when we last spoke, we were a little bit worried if they still had that spark. Did they get lucky last year? Obviously, they went off and won an Olympic gold medal, and I think we were kind of waiting to see if they would step up to the plate. And they certainly did. LA was a tough event for them and they were really gutted, but to see not only how they bounced back in San Francisco, but that final, they really seized that final and made it theirs. They weren't leading from the beginning. They fought and they really won that race. So I think definitely they aren't where Australia is right now with 3 championships under their belt, but they are at the beginning of their journey. And I think very young, fresh, and still excited. Not that the Australians aren't young, fresh, and still excited, but if we look at Australia right now, they are leading the championship, but they've been hit with a pretty big, devastating loss. Not only obviously missing out on that final in San Francisco is one thing, but to go through a traumatic event like that with the wing collapse, like I was about 50 meters away and it was so scary, but to actually be on that boat and have that happen to you in a move that you've done hundreds of times before, I just worry a little bit of what that does for the way that you sail the boat in the future, and I think it's great. I mean, you're there at SailGP Technologies right now. I know they're fixing the wings. They've made this call to not go to Rio because the importance of safety is such a high priority. But when I think about big incidents in the past, like Ben Ainsley and Nathan Atteridge having the collision in Sydney in the pre-start where, Nathan's bow got taken off, but those moments, whether it's a capsize or an incident like that, they do sit in the back of your brain for a little while.
Yeah, I think that's, and I guess that's the responsibility on the engineers and the builders here to make all the sailors feel confident. I mean, I was down there watching them build some of the webs that they're going to put in the back of the front section of the wings to strengthen that, and they've done a full job of sort of working out what the incident is, and hopefully that when we do the testing in New York, and I guess ultimately first day we get a bit of breeze, that might not be in New York, it might not be till we get to beautiful Portsmouth here, and sailing on the Solent in the UK, that we get a good bit of breeze, but that'll give them the reassurance. But no, I agree. I mean, for Chris Draper, the wing trimmer, I mean, I think the only saving grace is they probably didn't necessarily do anything wrong themselves, now that we found there was a slight issue with it. But my question on it a little bit was in some ways, were they lucky? Because I thought Singsby was going to go straight into the back of the boats in front of him, and it was just an aggressive braking maneuver, which is probably not the right thing to say. But they came away, Australia, no penalty points. Yes, they missed the final, but some of the videos on Instagram, it's like AI has taken the bow of the Australian boat from one side of the Italian rudder to the other without breaking the bow or the rudder off. I mean, it was
Okay,
so
I
close.
agree. I agree it was so close, but I actually think they would have been alright, but actually with the forces, that's what shoved them into, Italy.
Right.
Because
Okay.
I
Yeah.
was watching, I had the beautiful angle, I was looking down the
Yeah.
line and, you referenced me sailing, in Rio, so I sailed with Jason Waterhouse, who's the flight controller on Australia, and I'm watching and I think, "Jace, save it, Jace, come on, you got this," because 'cause they're up high, and then,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
saved it, I was like, "Yeah," and then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, so, yeah, who knows, we'll never know exactly, what came first, but, yeah, pretty lucky that I mean, a wing damage is collapsing is pretty bad, but the fact that, they got away with the event with 4th and they're leading the championship now, I mean, you never would have called that timing is everything, but I think for them, I do think they'll bounce back. We saw New Zealand bounce back after their wing collapse, and in a way, like, it can go either way. It really bonds the team together. You have a lot of confidence in the people that are around you, and you kind of rebuild, and you have those stories. I think they've been through the highs and lows of sailing in their careers as individuals and as a team. So I think when you have that much history and you have that much success, that they will bounce back pretty strong. And, I mean, they've had a really good season so far, and I think this when we're looking at the top
So
3 and trying to get
why do you think? So my question is Chris Draper an upgrade over Kyle? Like, that was the biggest news when we came in at the beginning of the season. Kyle Langford leaving Australia was the single biggest story, really. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
Andy Maloney was a
Andy
big
is a big
deal,
one, which we'll get to,
but
yeah. I
three wins with them together. But
yeah.
Australians look pretty fast. Now we've had the T-foil change. Maybe that's something that Jason's all over with how you use these T-foils. I don't know, but yeah, it's a big one. Go on.
I think generally when you have a very good flight controller, like the British do with Luke Parkinson and like the Australians do with Jace, is that they're adapting a little bit better than some of the other flight controllers. I also think that they've had exposure to T-foils in other sailing, so they kind of understand the forces. But same with the drivers. I really think that the way that the T-foils are reacting, the driver has to drive the boat differently. There's a different sensation. I think obviously Tom and Dylan have that experience as well. I think Chris has definitely made a big change with Maybe the lighter breeze. Chris Draper used to sail with Nathan Outteridge, who you call the Wind Whisperer, but we always wondered, was Chris Draper the Wind Whisperer? And,
Yeah.
and I think in a way, Chris brings a different lens, and when you do something the same way for so long, sometimes it's really nice having fresh ideas come in. "Oh, I've never thought about it that way," or and he's really slotted in there super nicely and done a great job. I think what will be telling is they had that tough event in Dubai, didn't make the final, lighter breeze. LA was light, but they snuck into that final. When we get to New York and those lighter venues, can they keep that momentum? And then Chris gets the new title.
Yeah, well, for me they were the fastest boat in Dubai. They just made an absolute hash of the start in race 5. So I completely agree with you that I think that they've transformed themselves in the light winds. And I guess if you're a gambling man looking ahead to the Abu Dhabi Grand Final, you're going to need to be light winds. But yeah, Dynasties Australia, I am 100% on board with, but where I do agree with Spain is the way they sailed in that final in San Fran, and the fact they, come back from winning in season 4, as they showed us, you've just got to make that grand final. You don't need to be all singing and all dancing through the season. But yeah, so Spain might well turn out to be a dynasty, but I slightly disagree with the name of it here. But anyway, that's what we're here for, isn't it? We're here to get a bit of a reaction to our thoughts and ideas and stir up some interest.
Yeah, one thing on Spain, I think it's super impressive. Obviously, Nicole, their strategist, has been battling
Oh
through
yeah.
a knee injury. So she tore a ligament in her knee, and she's still been sailing on some of the most epic boats in the world, and
Yeah.
doing a really good job at it. So a big shout out to her. I think it just goes to show for them, all 6 players are so important on that team. They really don't wanna have a change, they don't wanna have a missing person, because what they've got going is working really well. Even if you gotta hobble across the boat, it's worth it.
Yes, no, they 100%. They've done really well, but we should probably move on from that now. Otherwise, we're going to start getting told off by Liam for spending too long on this podcast, and we need to get going on. So, what's our next session?
Okay, so next up, we've got positive momentum. Now, last year's we said just need to win, and that's Canada. And so Canada has slotted in to the positive momentum. And I've also got in positive momentum Emirates, Great Britain, and France. So let's kick things off with Canada.
Yeah, well, got to have the most positive momentum, I guess. After they a dodgy start to the season. And obviously new ownership, and I know some of the people in that team quite well. So I know there was perhaps a hint of high expectation with not an awful lot of reason for that expectation, if you see what I mean. It's, there's a bit of a journey to go on, and Giles had one or two good events with Emirates GBR at the end of season 4, but he's still new to SailGP. Comes from a slower boat background, so he's got plenty to learn. But wow, has he been good this last bit of the season. Sydney, they were really good. LA, they were unreal, and then backed it up. And so I think they've gone, what have they gone? Have they gone like 2-1-3 or something in the last 3 events and fired it up? And yeah, we'll come on to it, and we're going to get out of whack, but the 2 people in the need of win were Canada and Rockwool Denmark, and they have gone polar opposites on how you deal with that need of win / definitely not getting a win as Rockwool Denmark have. We'll come on to them, no doubt. But yeah, Canada just look really good. They've got some confidence, I think. Feel like, yes, Giles has done a good job. I think CJ, Annie and Giles at the back seem to have got a pretty tight setup of how they're working things, pretty good comms, and they're a nice foil for each other. Giles, for me, is Mr. Conservative. He's almost perhaps a little bit too conservative.
But you got Billy. You got Billy to balance him out,
mate,
too.
We'll come on to Billy, but you got Paul Campbell James, who's like, Maverick Supersonic. I mean, he is loose as a goose, and the plan is evolving on the spot. So, and then I think Annie somehow is managing the 2 of them. But yeah, I was going to say, for me, the MVP on that boat is Billy. I think he is, he likes a lumberjack. He likes a lumberjack shirt. He likes to be pretty loose, but he is super accurate. And in these, we've had quite, well, you tell me about San Fran, but LA for sure was pin flat water. And I think as soon as it's so flat like that, then you can push the ride height pretty high with a bit less risk associated with it than you would have. If you try and fly high and the water's choppy, then there's an element of guesswork, isn't there, or luck needed, because you could get a rogue wave. And Billy's kind of 100 or naught, isn't he? Seems to be the way. And
Yeah, I mean,
he's
I
been
think for
great.
him, so impressive coming off, an injury which was essentially falling off the foils and water blasting him into a shoulder dislocation, and then coming back and being like, "I'm not afraid to push because that's what we have to do." And I think that's the whole thing with the sailors on at SailGP is you've got to know the limit and you've always got to be kind of trying to get there and not go over. LA super flat, San Fran, we had this big swell. I think that team, they've just gelled really nicely. I think with a team, it's really nice to have those balance, like the balance of energy being different and the balance of the way that you might approach a race being different, as long as you can get on the same page. And I think Canada has done an amazing job. Watching them win and take that was awesome to see. I mean, they're such a lovely team. I mean, everyone's a lovely team, but the Canadians, I think everyone just wanted them to have a win as well.
Some are
So
more lovely than
especially,
others, eh, Lisa?
yeah, but we'll get there. No, but I think for them it was just fantastic. Obviously, Sydney getting so close and then coming to get that win in LA. But next up,
Can I
great.
just, sorry,
No,
really quickly? I'm sorry to interrupt,
sure.
but you just
Yes, of course.
you brushed over the fact that Canada came off the foils. The pressure of the water at the speed they're going is enough to knock Billy back from his position through the cockpit into the back of the cockpit and dislocate his shoulder. I think,
Yeah,
like, perhaps we lose the
intensity.
reality of that on the telly,
Yeah.
and that's mind blowing. So he just blew his shoulder out from the water pressure of one of those big touchdowns. I mean, I think probably for people listening at home, that would be quite surprising. I mean, it's quite surprising for me.
Yeah, I guess, like, the analogy that, Billy's used, thanks to Liam being up to date with Racing on the Edge, is it's like running full sprint into a brick wall. The way I would describe it is like having a fire hose at you while you're just getting hit in the face. So I think, and I feel this a lot actually because I'm on the ground, like, right on the water near the action, coming to you guys live, and you're sitting in your commentary booth in London, and I feel like so often I'm kind of like feeling everything because I'm right there, and then you guys are a little bit distanced from it. So I know that those watching at home probably don't feel as much as intensity. So we try get those stories across, and we try kind of bring you the action live. But I think what these sailors are doing on the F50s is absolutely incredible. And we've seen a lot of injuries lately, which is not good to see, but I think everyone's just pushing these boats and so much and just trying to get so much out of them.
Yeah, and Billy probably would run into a brick wall.
Interesting take, but anyway, moving on from that. We love Billy. Okay, Great Britain. So, Great Britain have had an awesome season so far, but I think they actually struggled a little bit on the American leg. They were pretty disappointed just to miss out on the final in LA. Obviously, Australia sneaking in there, and then San Francisco just didn't put it together. They got 7th there. So I'm
They
not
were
exactly.
terrible.
Yeah, I don't really
Didn't put it
know.
together there. They had a shocker there. I mean, again, they're in the positive momentum section. And don't get me
Negative
wrong,
momentum.
well, I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? I suppose, and this is what I think become really important at the back end of the season, because I think that momentum into the final event and during the final event will be definitive for it, as is so often the case. But yeah, they were brilliant. Dylan's let's come in. The relationship him and Hannah have formed up. It's been really good. Yeah, you've got Gooby and Parko, Ian Jensen and Luke Parkinson in front of him. They've always had the big, powerful grinding setup on that boat. Neil Hunter, Nick Hutton, and they've always had that sort of solid core team. But I was disappointed with how the heads seemed to go down a little bit when they had a couple of bad races in San Fran. And okay, I mean, they missed the final in LA. They were blimming close, so I guess I'm being a bit
Yeah,
harsh to
let that
question
slide.
that momentum. But yes, they
It was
I
boat
think.
handling, I think, in San
Right,
Francisco.
okay.
I think, Hannah and Dylan, I think strategy-wise, they're very strong. as you said, you've got Parko and Goobs that are really good in terms of the speed. But it's kind of like the first time they've been thrown together with a shifty sort of race course. It was wavy, it was gusty, and that around Mark 1 they would get into trouble. Their starts weren't very good, and then it was like a snowball effect, kind of like you said that they weren't able to bounce back from small errors, which they have been able to do quite well. They've been able to overtake this season so far, but yeah, in San Fran, they were just making crazy boat handling errors and, yeah, struggling in those conditions. So, I mean, I definitely won't write them off for the season. I think everyone's going to have you have a 7th and that's not a good result, but that's not a season ender by any means. I think still very impressive season for them so far,
No, yeah,
and
no,
yeah.
sorry, I've probably been a bit harsh on them, but I just feel like well, not harsh on them, but it's just, I suppose it's around these categories of positive momentum. I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
right now, when they come back to New York, if they don't come back in with a good one, then there's gonna, yeah,
Yeah.
that
I mean, they are
it's
second
an
overall, but yeah,
important
time will tell.
that joint with first as well. I'm seriously hamming this up, but I just feel like I was surprised and only surprised because they've been so good
Yes,
since it's all
exactly.
come in with
When
Dylan's arrival, and
expectations are up
the
here, it's
expectations have
hard.
gone. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
But anyway,
ultimately, they should be comparing themselves with the best, shouldn't they? Like them and Australia look like the form teams, and they had a bit of a clanger, so they need to come back fighting.
just to clarify, thanks to Liam, producer Liam, GBR are actually a point behind Australia, so they're not joint at the top.
Ah, copy. Okay, there you go. I'm ever an optimist. Um,
Okay, well, the other team that we have in the positive momentum is France. So, I mean, it was awesome to see them back on the start line after missing a couple of events for their
they could
boat
only
not to be
really have
ready.
positive momentum given they didn't do the first
I know,
two
but
events.
when you haven't sailed for a while and everyone else has been, you would expect that you might be a little bit rusty, but
Yes.
they are nailing the starts. In San Francisco, it was like seeing them in full action. I think with the French, the one thing that I'm seeing from down on the water is that they're lacking a little bit of speed upwind. So in the final, they were in the final in San Fran, right? I
Yeah.
can't
They
remember
were.
now.
They were. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and they were leading and they just didn't have the speed and they just fell back normally when they would be in that position in the past with the old configuration. They would have handled that, but and they would have really thrived in that, to be honest. But I think they haven't without having that extra event on the water, I think they're struggling a little bit getting in tune with the top speeds. But I think it's awesome to see them coming in so strong. I think that they will probably have good results throughout the season. Obviously, they're not at that top level yet, and you don't ever want to not have speed because I always say speed makes you look clever. And I think, yeah, with this time, we've had a massive break and we will have before New York. So it's really how do they use that to be able to get on the water in New York and be fast again?
Yeah, and I think the thing that's always impressed me with the French is they're quite good at chunking their training and focus points. So I think last season they struggled in light winds, and you could see they put in a lot of work. Now I still think looking at LA, they've got work to do in that light air. That's not their natural. It's not their natural sweet spot. But starting wise this year, wow, Contan's really turned it on. I mean, it's interesting because to look at it, you think, oh, it's quite high risk. It's often the French that are doing a lot of meters in the last 10 seconds, and how the bearings are holding together on his rudder system for the amount he's throwing that boat around in the last few seconds. But yet he's consistently coming out with it, and I guess if there's a gap, speed's your friend in those last few seconds. So Contan's definitely working hard on that and got a bit of a formula, and it'll be interesting to see where they go from here because they've been the nearly team. And I wonder if we had the category of last time of just need a win. I think of all the teams, France, well, we're going to come on to another team in a minute who really could do with a win, but they were in the category last time and didn't choose to accept it. So they maybe don't get to go back in that box. So I'm going to put France in. I think if France could, get that win, then their positive momentum could be huge because, it's been great seeing back. They've been going pretty well, but I feel like they need a win to take that, to not become the nearly men and women of SailGP.
All right, let's keep there's a lot of teams now. Oh, actually, one thing before we move on is we are also going back to France. We're going to Saint-Tropez
Yes.
now,
Oh, good point. Yeah, you'll be loving that.
which is
Few
something
ripples
new.
on your rosé, LD, I'd imagine,
Yeah.
won't there? You'll be
Yep.
down there living the dream.
Exactly. I can't wait to go back there. I'm sure the French are really excited, and that's a multi-year deal as well. So, the French positive momentum, and I'm sure they'll be trying to push for a home event win. But up next, we've got more questions than answers, and
This is
for
going to be the
those,
controversial section, Lisa Darmanin.
we've got the black foil, so the New Zealand SailGP team, and Rockwool Denmark. And I tell you what, Rockwool Denmark, gonna be asking some questions.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Without being too funny, they'll be asking whether their boat's the same width as everyone else, won't they? Because like it was a little bit wider coming into
Oh,
the. No, I mean that was. I mean it's so.
it's gutting,
It's gutting for
gutting.
several reasons. It was the first time we had 12 boats actually make it to the start. And I think we got a lap and
Yeah.
a half with 12 boats. So just from SailGP's perspective and the growth side, it was pretty heartbreaking that we got a lap and a half of that. But for the Danish, yeah, I mean we interviewed Nikolai earlier on in the season, maybe around Sydney time, and he talked about how, you know, we can't take too many risks. We got to just chip away, and that consistency, and you know, it's a long season and all the rest of it, which I'm on board with. I mean, as we've said, you've got to get to the final. All that matters is you make the top 3 in the overalls by the last event in the season in Abu Dhabi. That's all that matters. Then you've got one shot to win the whole thing. But the trouble is, if you then make a mistake like they did, I mean, it just, you know, I think what it's important to maybe, and you'll be able to tell us a little bit more from seeing it on the water,
Yeah.
but the foils are a little wider than the boat and a little wider than we're used to, aren't they?
Yeah, I think one thing to note, is they had a bit of a crew change as well. So TJ, their wing trimmer, wasn't at that event, because his wife was having another child, which is totally fair for him to not be there. But I think when you have any change on the boat.
But he's not steering the boat.
No, 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 no. Stay with me, people, stay with me.
Coffee.
Is There's different responsibilities, and so, yes, Nikolai's holding the wheel, but you've got the wing sheet. We don't know how they do the playbook on that, but we don't know who's calling the turn-ups, we don't know. I agree that the boat is wider, so the boat is significantly wider. So what the difference is, traditionally with the J boards or the L boards that we had in previous seasons, they don't go any wider than the hull, they sit underneath, whereas a T-foil, 'cause it's got 2 ends, that's sticking out the side of the boat. And the other thing is that the foil can go, inboard and outboard. So for them, the boat is wider. They probably shouldn't have been going that close to a mark anyway. The other thing is they had a trip up with the mark in Auckland. That was an error. Their board actually went out when it should have been under. And then to have it again in LA, I just think, they were centimeters off getting it right, but it it was just diabolical, and I think when I saw it, didn't think that it would be that bad, but the fact that they caused so much damage just goes to show how these how strong these new titanium T-foils are, because nothing is. Yeah, it's just horrible to see and so disappointing for that team. You don't wanna see any team out because of damage, and you just want everyone to be out there ready to race and put their best foot forward, and yes, that was human error, and yes, that shouldn't have happened, but they are learning the new width of the boat, but it's not right to cut it that fine right now.
And is that them done? Is that them out for making the final this year?
I wouldn't write anything off seeing as what's happened this season so far.
Oh, blimey, Lisa, you love to get on the fence. I personally think I don't think they'll be able to make the final now. I think that mistake's them done, unfortunately, in terms of making the
Yeah.
final. I think that they what we saw in Sydney, we saw some really, they were fast, getting fast. You talked about it earlier. Boat speed makes you a tactical genius, and so I think for the Danes that they've got to come back absolutely swinging
Yeah.
for the rest of the season, and I think what it is a good opportunity. Is if I could have any, well, you can always have criticism of anyone, but if we could have anything to say, is they have been on that conservative side, and I don't disagree with that.
I don't agree with you.
I love their journey up to you, but well, they don't win a
Um,
lot of
I
races.
I think I think last season, yes, it was like, "Let's chip away. We're just gonna play the numbers game. It's all gonna come good." And then obviously Christchurch happened, they had a collision. But then this time, I think they've come in firing. I think it's been a different Denmark, that it's like all or nothing. And I mean, I don't know when you had this interview with Nikolai, but I definitely think it's a different approach.
Yeah.
I'd and I mean, it's been working for them, but they've had a few incidences that have really hurt them. As I mentioned, Auckland and then this now. I think it's just like we're at 2 ends of the spectrum for them, and yeah, I know I was sitting on the fence before, but I do agree, like, they're really up against it this season. Likelihood of making the final is low, but then can you play more aggressive? And that's how you get
Yes.
wins on the board.
Exactly, yeah, and that's where you're right, and that's where I think for they've what they've got what seems to be such a great team spirit, such a great team and unity. This will, a bit like maybe like the Australian thing, should bring them together. They're going to gather around Nikolai and puff him up a bit, because that's the type of team they seem to be. And I do think it takes the shackles off. Let's not think
Yeah.
about the final. Let's go out and win some races,
No
win
pressure.
some events. Yes, no pressure. And I think hopefully that can be. Yeah, all right. If everything goes super weird and they end up in the final, or they've managed to win every event between now and the end of the season, then yeah, who knows what's possible. But they should approach it from here like that, and like go and take it on, get some wins, because they've got the talent. And like the second day in Sydney, they were just on fire. Like they looked unplayable almost, So there's no lack of talent with Nikolai and the team. But I think they've got a big bit of time ahead of them now to try and get it, and that for me was possibly one of the most heartbreaking ones, because they're just such a nice team and they've got so much going on. And now I'm going to hand this one to you, because we've also because this is one I know that's going to blow everyone up and call us clueless, or
New
whatever they're
Zealand.
going to call us. Black foils. Yeah, we've got the black foils in the more question and answers section.
Yeah, I think with New Zealand, it's tough. They've had a big crew change with Andy Maloney stepping away and Leo Takahashi stepping in, and I mean, if we compare it to the Australian model where they've replaced it with Chris Draper, that's going really well. We don't really need to touch that, but I think for Pete and Blair that are used to kind of throwing the boat in situations that like, they sail the boat so well. They push the boat. They, tack and jibe in crazy positions. They're trying to execute awesome maneuvers. But now I think they've got a limiter of what they can do. I think they definitely have potential to win races. They've shown that. But I think they have to understand that they might not be able to cash the checks they were checking last year, and they might just have to tweak their game a little bit. I think the one thing that worried me was the LA final where they were in the lead and,
Yeah, they
they
got
had too many
overtaken.
wobbles and
Yeah.
and Canada got overtaken because that in the past, I think would never happen, but for them, they're so close, and I definitely won't write them off, and I'm not writing anyone off at this point, but I think if they think about it in that way, and they change their playbook just slightly to account for we're not at 110% all the time, they're gonna still be contenders this season.
Seems like Pete's gone all in on SailGP. He's left his
Yeah.
left his other job, and seems to have doubled down on SailGP. So I feel like he's definitely perhaps sharpening his pencil, as it were, and razor focusing in on that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's awesome to see, I think, for someone like Pete. He obviously believes in the Black Foils. He's the leader there. He wants to they had such a good championship last season and just had a shocker in San Francisco. Like, it wasn't the Kiwi team we're used to seeing. So I think for him, winning he's won a lot of things in his life. He's won a couple of Olympic medals, a couple of America's Cups, but now he obviously really wants to win SailGP, and I mean, they've got all the elements. They're just gonna have to look at it a little bit differently, and going into New York, it's a tricky venue, and we know Pete's really good at sailing in the tricky breeze. It's just whether they can nail those foiling maneuvers, I guess.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, when you've got a team that's kind of got the experience and delivered results and stuff. It's so easy for us to give them that little bit more margin. Even part of me's thinking, well, last year they won the season, got to the final, and they were exposed in the areas they didn't have. Is this a plan? Are they working on some areas? Are they making Leo really push ride high and things like that? Because last year, every time they tacked or jibed, any maneuver they did, if it was a bad one, they didn't lose compared to others, and if they
Yeah.
did a good one, they gained. And that's, I think you'll know from your Olympic sailing, but it's the free meters, it's the cheap meters in the basics that's normally the difference between the great people. Everyone can get a good wind shift every now and again and kind of look a bit flash, or certainly at this level, but it's can you repeatedly drop that excellence? And yeah, we did hear and see a few mistakes. So are they working on things? But certainly I think we've got them in this bottom section, but at times they still look pretty unplayably good when they put it all together. They did win the light wind one in Dubai. It's just going to be quite like the final in Abu Dhabi, and so again, if I feel like they're perhaps being quite harshly done with the more questions than answers, and they've had. We've seen that they just need to find consistency. I think for me, that's ultimately the thing. They have made some mistakes. That I heard Blair talking about, we got a little ventilation in that final with in LA, but because there's a lot of weed in the water. I don't know if that was something to do with it or what. But then again, that sort of sounds like an excuse.
Well, I actually, to be fair to young Leo, I was flying back from San Francisco on the same flight as him. We were actually, we both had a row to ourselves. That was very nice back in economy class.
Oh, of
And
course you
Leo,
are.
every time I looked up from my sleep, Leo's just there watching the racing back, doing his study. So he used all 15 hours to fly back from San Francisco to study the flight control.
Yeah, no doubt listening to the commentary, I'd imagine, to really pick up the pointers.
Yeah, exactly. All
Yeah,
right.
but I think they have got work to do, though, haven't they, in New Zealand? Let's be honest. They've got some work.
Oh, they wouldn't be happy, but I don't think they'd be happy where they're sitting right now. But they're yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm not really sure what to expect of them next. I think what's been interesting is there's been a few excuses, like you said, a bit of ventilation here. Auckland, there was some issues with the boat, but it's kind of at one point you just have to forget about the excuses and just get out there and race, because everyone's having these moments of this didn't go right, this didn't go right, but you kind of just have to kind of brush it off and keep going.
Copy that. Let's brush it off and get on to the next section then, shall we?
All right, hard lessons learned and pushing ahead. We have in this group, we've got Italy and Switzerland. So, which one do you want to start with first?
I'd say Switzerland. I feel like I think the Swiss have been underwhelming up until season 5, and then they've come in this season, and I've actually been, yeah, they can get better, of course they can. They're not at the top of the table, are they? But they've had some really good moments, and they're in that stage of a team where they're just starting to consistently win the odd race. They still have a clanger. And that's the difference between the great teams and the lesser teams, is that they avoid those mistakes. But the Swiss I've been quite impressed with. I think
Me too.
the Serhestedt and Sarafagis, which, let's be honest, surname wise, come on guys, hook us up with some easy surnames.
You mean Schneider?
Schneider, yeah, sorry. Oh God, well there you go. Yes, Seb Snyder.
That's how confusing it is for Stevie.
And Sarah Faggis, yeah, there you go. It's been a while. Is in this SailGP prison that I'm in here, but yeah, I think Arno coming in has really been a solid leading kind of figure on the boat to help Seb, and the two of them seem to be forming a really, really nice relationship.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing, I definitely agree with you. I think it's been awesome to see the momentum that the Swiss have had, not in the momentum category, but we'll talk about that later. They've had, I think, wins in races, and then they've had 11ths, and they've been bouncing back and forth. But to actually know that you can win races, I think is super important, because that's the only way you can win an event at SailGP. But to know that you've got that in your bank, I think, as you said, bringing Arno in, they've also got a Swiss flight controller. The whole team is Swiss, and I think the Swiss kind of having people that think the same way as you, in the sense of the way that you process things, like having that nationality rule. It's like, Australians or Kiwis, and I'm sure British as well, you kind of think the same way. So to have Swiss people around you and be able to be like, this is how we're going to approach things, and have everyone on board in the same way, rather than, maybe two cultures that are quite different. I think that kind of lets Seb be Seb and find his flair that way.
Yeah, and they've got Stu Dodson, they've got Martin No, Martin, that's his dad. Matt Gottrell. I say that because my
Yeah.
dad used to sail with Matt Gottrell's dad back
Oh,
in the
okay.
day,
Well,
funnily
yes, not
enough. So there
Swiss,
you go.
not Swiss,
That's
but
my
they're in their
excuse. No,
grinders
no, no.
union at the
No, but
front.
they are in the grinders. But I think the interesting thing with that is I think when I look at that Swiss team before, they always had quite small grinders. And I think we underestimate how important it is to be able to dynamic, for Arno to be able to move that wing quickly when he needs to, get the catches in, really be quite aggressive with the boat. And if you haven't got that horsepower at the front on the handles, then it makes it really hard for Brian Matrell on the flight control or for Arno on the wing. And I think the Swiss have done a nice job recruiting wise, I suppose. They've had a full change, really, which in some ways we felt was them perhaps giving himself an excuse for a bit of an average bit. And then, but even Maud coming in at the back, she's not been around a lot on these F50s. So she's
Yeah.
learning it. They're all learning it, but there's a lot of possibility there.
And they have a new coach, so Javier, who was Martinez's coach for an Olympic gold medal. So they brought in some new talent there on the coaching booth. And we haven't spoken about the coaches that much so far in
Yes,
this podcast. Maybe that's a podcast for another day. We can rank the coaches. That'll be fun.
100%.
But I think they are having such an important role in the team, not just from a sense of obviously giving them the feedback they need to respond better the next day, but in real time from the coaching booth. They've been more important than they've ever been in sailing. And I think having the right person there, especially when you have all these new team dynamics, it's 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 just so integral to the part of the team now.
Yeah. No, I agree. Completely agree on that. And I've been, like I say, I've been pretty impressed with the Swiss. So I think they could be ones to watch. And we've got an event in Geneva, and I guess that's going to be the one where they're going to really have the pressure on. But I feel like by then in the season, let's see what they can do. They've been going all right. I think, yeah, hard lessons learned. I feel like they have had some hard lessons, and I feel like they have learned. So tick.
The other team that's had some hard lessons learned is the Red Bull Italy team. I think for me, watching on the ground, let's comparing Auckland to maybe San Francisco, it was a different team. They seem to have figured out a little bit more how to sail the boat. I think around the track, they're a little bit less wobbly. They're able to string some stuff together. Now, certainly no consistency there at all at this stage, but to see, you can see that it's clicking and, they're getting the starts right. They're doing better around the racetrack with their first jives. And so they're moving in the right direction. And I'm trying to read all the notes because Liam's got so many notes for me. But I think one of them is it is it Jimmy's influence? Is it Kyle's influence? Is Ruji just learning how this boat works now? And as a double gold medalist, is he like, okay, I've got this, let's go?
Yeah, I mean, I
All of
agree
the
with all of
above.
those. All of the above. I think the most important person on that team in terms of the hard lessons learned and needing to keep raising the game, which they have been in his defence, but is Andrea on the flight control.
Yeah.
And I say this knowing I wouldn't be able to do it myself. So I'm not I'm not claiming, oh, that's easy. I think it's really hard because
So
it's the
hard.
one thing that's so removed from any other sailing we all do. It's such a different skill, I would imagine. But when Jason Saunders came in New Zealand, they were in that game. And yeah, they're getting better, but I think it's a direct relation to how well Andrea's doing on it. I think Kyle's Kyle. Come on, I mean, he's going to be in the conversation for the best wing trimmers, until the day he decides to hang up his what do you hang up as a wing trimmer? Gloves.
Yes.
Hang up your gloves or whatever. But and Ruji's of course got 2 gold medals. There's plenty of talent in there. We know that for sure. But I think, yeah, for Andrea, that's a really hard skill to learn, and I feel he's coming on pretty well with it, and it's almost a direct line to their skill level and their output is how well he's kind of getting to grips with each day.
Yeah, I think one thing this team's doing quite well is they're setting the expectations like in a very realistic way. So they haven't come in and said, "Oh, we're going to win events by the end of the season." They know what their trajectory is, and kind of to your point of some of the other teams, like the French team is, I think that they know what to work on, and they're measuring themselves against what their expectation is. And so if you're going like, you should be getting these results. It's not like you should be winning everyone. So every time I talk to Ruji after the race, he's like, yeah, we're happy. Like, yeah, we want to do better, but we know we're doing these things right, and we're really happy with that. So I think they're not getting ahead of themselves. And I think that's where you end up like people like Andrea and Ruji, uh, is you end up in a position where you're in an environment where it's okay to learn. And when you feel comfortable kind of you don't wanna make a mistake, but when you feel comfortable being like, "I'm just gonna give this a go and see if it pays off. Okay, sweet, it does. I'm gonna do that again," rather than be in fear that, "Oh, if I get this wrong, we'll come last," or whatever. So I think they've created a really nice environment, and I think that that leadership with Jimmy off the water, I think he knows how to build a successful team, but then also Kyle as the coach on the water. I think they've got a really good environment to get better at every event.
Yeah, well, and I guess coming to coaches, and obviously nowadays that's all I seem to get asked to do is coaching. So I kind of get that there is a role, or hope there's a role there anyway. But yeah, Felipe Presti's with them as well, isn't he? I think he's probably, if you know if
Superstar
you
coach.
yeah, he's probably the original rock star coach, isn't he, Philippe? Really, I mean, he's kind of been around for a while at that top lens. So I think, yeah, perhaps the frame of it, and maybe more importantly, we'll come on to this, but they've avoided penalty points,
Yes,
which
that's a tough thing to do.
seems to be a strong strategy call by the Italians. So they've got that whole that keep it simple, stupid, and chip away, try and find that low hanging fruit, and the Italians have done all right there. So I think a lot of hard lessons learned, for sure.
Couple of hard lessons learned for the next tier, but, we're
Yes.
gonna call them race by race, event by event, and that's because all of them have had some tough moments happen. I think I'd actually like to start with Brazil because obviously we're not in Rio right now, but I think Brazil, it's hard to have them in this category. I think their penalty points are pretty harsh. I think the way that they bounce back from that collision with the Germans in practice,
They
you
have a
know,
coach in a booth looking at the other boat coming. They have an alarm system on the wing that's beeping when there's a collision imminent, and they have a strategist that could be on the other side of the boat looking around for other boats.
yeah, true.
Now,
I
granted, they
know,
were
but
on starboard. Granted, they were
they
on
weren't starboard.
starboard. They totally had
Yeah.
the right of way, and it's really all on Germany. However, I,
Yes, yes. Okay,
however,
fair.
they
You
had
make
opportunity.
They had opportunity, yes, okay, time and opportunity, sure. You have to see Craig Mitchell every time you commentate, I don't, so you can have
Well,
that
that
argument
is
with
very
him.
true. Yeah.
I think it is quite harsh, but what I wanna say is the way that they bounced back from that and kind of just weren't so it didn't really change the way Martini sailed. I think we've seen really good things from them, but then, they're really up and they're really down, and so that consistency is not there for them right now. I think, I think that they also have quite a good learning structure, but I think it's quite hard when your key player with the most experience is Andy Maloney, who's busy learning how to fly the boat with his new T-foils. As a flight controller, you don't have a lot of concept of what's going on in the race, so it's hard for you to provide input in that sense. So I think, on the water, he's not having as much as an impact as, say, Kyle is on the Italian team. He's probably having a massive impact off the water in their debriefs and the way they approach racing, in between racing, but it's not like he's that voice in the head. Yes, Lee McMillan has experience at SailGP, but,
Not a
Andy's the
lot. Not a
big
lot, though.
name.
Yeah.
He's the big name that they signed, and he doesn't have a lot of capacity just with the nature of that role to kind of be that person to lean on in real time.
Yeah. And I also think, I mean, since we spoke, they've they have signed well. They've got Goody in there. Paul Goodison's come in, sort of taken on that strategist position. But again, I think what's interesting with that is that the strategist position's great when there's that little bit of time and things are happening more like chess, and you can play it out and you've got time to think about your move. When it suddenly happens quite quickly, I still feel like that goes really onto the drivers. And then for Martini, learning the limitations and possibility of the boat. I mean, as I say, in terms of when I watched her FX sailing for her second gold medal in Tokyo, instinctive, reactive sailing, there was no one better than her. She's got flair for days, but the trouble with a 5-6 person boat is that time it takes to kind of get the comms out and make things sort of gel as a team, so that maneuver that you make the right decision for is then executed perfectly. It is something that I guess that they're all still having to work on a lot as a team. So there's been some nice moments for them though, hasn't it? I mean, how much were we screaming at the screen that they held on to win? Blimmin' Aussies. I mean,
I know,
come on,
just this one
come
time,
on,
okay?
slingers, chuck a dog a bone. Yeah, I mean, it was just such it's so exciting to see them, and I think there's plenty. I think they are fair enough to be back there, because that's where they are. They are race by race at the moment, event by event. That's what they should be. They shouldn't have the expectations. They should be taking those learnings and bringing them all in. And I think you make a good point for Andy. I think it's hard if you're head down on the coffee grinder working the flight and you haven't got that big picture to come in. Whereas for Kyle, sat up on the side, you can be much more the conductor and the general of everything, and use that headspace you've got.
Well, a team that I didn't really expect to be all the way back here is Germany.
Yeah. I mean,
The
I would put them in the most disappointing of the season category. I mean, I really like Eric, and I really, I've got a lot of good friends on that boat, so it's not necessarily very easy for me to say, but I feel the German team, middle end of last season, we were starting to see, they had, they were coming up with some really new plays in the start box that were kind of getting them off some credible starts. You're like, wow, okay, they're really sort of thinking up some new ideas that other teams perhaps haven't seen, and all the rest of it. But since then, it just seems to have plateaued a little bit. I don't see the progression. And all right, yes, they're right back where they are because of penalty points. And I mean, don't want to be too light-hearted about it, and I do mean this gently, but that was the event they got Phil Robertson to come in and coach them for it. So maybe Phil said, we need to turn up the aggression a bit here, guys, and they really sort of absorbed that information. No, I'm sure Phil wouldn't have said that. That's a joke. Sorry, Phil. But it was a bit...
No comment.
No comment, yeah. Probably very wise. I'm throwing myself right under a bus as we speak here, Lisa. But I've been seriously disappointed. You look at their results, LA 8th, 5th, 7th, 11th, 7th, 7th, and then 2. San Francisco 9, 4, 10, 8, 9, 11, 8. I mean, they're consistently
They
where
should be
they
better
are.
than that.
I think so. The talent they've got on the boat, the ability they've got, and also what they showed us at times last year in that first season, when yes, you've got all the space for mistakes in a way in the world, but I've been disappointed with them. I feel like pressure's really on them as we get to New York, and then more importantly as we get into Europe, because we're going to go to Germany in August. And have they recruited well this season? Have they made the changes they need to? Their coach, well, one of the part of their coaching team was Joe Glanfield. He's gone to Canada. Have they actually lost in the transfer window rather than gained in the transfer window? I don't know. Well, you tell me. You're on the ground with them, chatting to them.
I think for me, when I'm watching the Germans at the moment, it's like nothing is going particularly well. And what I mean by that is nothing is horrendous, but nothing is great. So for example, we're talking about the Kiwis. They are, they're fast around the track. They're doing some things really well, and they might fall off the foils occasionally. But with the Germans, it's like everything just feels subpar at the moment. And so that's why their results are subpar. And I know that sounds really simple, but I just think, you don't ever see them at the start be like, oh, that was a great start by the Germans. You don't see them around the track saying, oh, they're nailing all the maneuvers at least. It just feels like nothing is going right. And, I know they had some issues in Auckland with their hydraulics and things like that, but that's not enough to kind of make the excuse for the season. So to be honest, I really don't know what it is. You're the coach out of the two of us. So what does the coach have to say?
Oh, wow. Just keep throwing these hospital passes at me.
Yeah, 100%.
I think, ultimately, I think it's very easy in SailGP to be a little bit too conservative in the start. I mean, ultimately, if you start mid-pack and are in the midline, you often are just going to be in a fight where there's an element of luck on that first downwind leg. So I think they need to up their risk level at the start. I think they've been kind of caught turning back a little bit too early. They're trying to lead and defend at the start, whereas actually that little bit more speed coming into it, I think, is kind of a good move. And And then, yeah, they're just kind of, I don't know, I'd need to be on board the boat a little bit more in terms of listening to their comms and finding out what they're up to. But ultimately, I think they're perhaps not focusing in enough like they were on the basics. Good manoeuvres. Let's be accurate with our manoeuvres. Let's just find a bit of space on the racecourse and then not overthink too much beyond that. Just keep our course speed up, and then hopefully the tactics will take their own space from there. But fundamentally, as with most SailGP, it's about getting off the start. And talking about getting off the start, we need to get ourselves
USA.
back to, yes.
Well, they got off the start in their USA events, which they didn't do in Sydney, so that was the step number one. But I think for this team, not the results that they really set out to get with this season. I think they started the season really strong in Dubai and the light breeze. We've been over this. They had the incident in Sydney, but I think looking at their results in San Francisco, they had 11-11, 9-9, 10-8, 10. And in LA, they had a 7-8, 4-5, 10, 9-8. And I mean, we've talked about results across the board here. People are getting like a third or a first or a fourth and then an 11th. But to have consistently poor results like that, obviously LA a fourth and a fifth, great. But one thing that's happening with USA, sorry, completely tangent change, new signing, Mike Manager.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they
I mean,
making
where's he going to
changes.
go on the boat?
Well, I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't. Well, I'm not sure. No, I mean, that's what I'm interested to see when we get to it. I mean, I was just quickly looking through there to see crew lists and suggestions on it. I mean, I kind of feel like they do need a change in that somewhere towards the back of the boat.
Yeah,
me,
I agree.
But equally, still, Mike, yeah, he comes from American Magic, doesn't he? He comes from sort of an America's Cup kind of setup, and but he's not SailGP. He's not worked on these boats, and so hopefully he's going to bring some knowledge. But yeah, that, like you said, San Francisco, it's like, has a home team ever had a worse event than that? Now, obviously, it's pretty harsh on them because they have 3 home events, so that's kind of a lot of scope for it to be on. But I think along with Germany, the USA, they'll be. I think what I've seen from them is they've done a fairly good job in between events of kind of talking the picture of we're getting better, what we're trying to make from this, we're taking our team on a journey and all the rest of it. But they need to start now actually hitting out some home runs. And I think between events, they perhaps need to be a little bit more foiling kind of focused and kind of get some camps together and start looking at these errors, because Taylor, starting wise, has been one of the best, and if you put it down to slow boat sailing where they're not foiling, that he's, his positioning is so good. I mean, it always has been from that match racing world and all the rest of it. So good with his positioning. But I watched a downwind in San Francisco, and they set up for a jibe. And as they go to set up for a jibe, the boat heels, they lose the windward rudder, and bang, that's 4, 5. So I think it's getting your head around the fact that maneuvers
the result
matter.
sheet is actually not showing their potential, because, as you said, they're up there. They're third in the race, they're second in the race. We saw that in Auckland, San Francisco, as you're saying. But then something happens, but the mistake isn't a little touchdown. It is a diabolical nosedive.
It's catastrophic.
That puts them to exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is the problem. And that's where I think the crew change obviously is important. What I think would be really good is having someone with an F50 background or someone with a SailGP background.
Yeah.
I think I said this last time, I feel like a broken record, is bringing them into their staff, whether it's coaching or in their lineup on the boat, that really understands the F50. I think everyone there knows what they're trying to achieve, but I think just having that deep knowledge in that team that they can tap into would be really strong. But as you said, I think just trying to get there in racing is so hard. So the best thing they can do is get that fast boat, keep the boat flat, keep the boat stable, and learn those foiling sort of nuances in smaller boats, and try bring that to the F50, because it's the only way
understanding the game. It's understanding the game you're playing, isn't it? You're not actually trying to be super cute and tactically absolutely picture perfect positioning. There'll be the odd moment for that, but a big part of the game in any of these fast boats is staying fast and respecting the maneuvers, and knowing that accurate maneuvers isn't just, a given. It's 300 meters.
Yeah,
It's like
everything.
15 seconds round the course by doing those things well. And I think that's where, for me, that little bit of F50 fast boat, I'm not sure exactly. I think Mike's background is, he's done the America's Cup sort of fast foiling boats, but I think he's a
Yeah.
laser sailor,
I think he's also
so.
said he'd won regatta in the Nacra with me. I'm
Oh,
pretty
nice.
sure.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. So
Um,
hopefully that can bring in that little bit of
yeah,
it's
very
that little bit of
brief.
fast boat
Yeah.
knowledge
I
that I
think
think they'll
yeah.
want, because their positioning, especially the starts, which is the hardest bit. He's been pretty blooming good on that, pretty
Yeah.
solid with that.
Gold star.
Uh,
Well done.
yeah.
We can't
Dishing
beat
out.
them up the whole time, but well done, Taylor. That I think that him and Mike have sailed together in other stuff as well, so they've got that relationship, kind of off the water. Sorry, not so on the water in not in Sail GP. So it really depends where they put him, and we don't know right now, so we can't make too much comment on it. We'll have to see at in the next Tiers episode if it's been a good move.
Still, no one seems to have signed Nathan Outridge or Phil Robertson fully, though, have they? Which I find
Yeah.
quite surprising in terms of pulling in that knowledge. I know I was teasing Phil a minute ago with his sort of cameo appearance in Sydney, but the guy's got an awful lot of knowledge and experience out there,
Yeah.
and I think Germany, I think USA, I think they should be signing someone. I think Nathan.
I'm
Get
I'm
them in
not sure
there,
Phil
and
Robertson's gonna get the call up for Taylor, knowing their
no,
relationship in the
well,
past, but
I'm
maybe
absolutely
Nathan Atteridge would be a great signing. I think he would be.
yes,
I think he'd be a great coach. Obviously, he'd be
yeah.
great on the wheel, but if they're not gonna give that up and they want an all-American team there, then someone like Nathan that's in the ear, that knows
Well, they've
how
had
we should
Jeremy
be.
Wilmot on the boat. He's Australian, isn't
He is, but I mean, there's Aussies on all the boats,
he?
except New Zealand.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, I mean he's been in America for a very long time, so he counts, I think, for them. But yeah, I think someone like Nathan could make a big difference to that team. I think Phil, I'm surprised that he's not in the mix. And I know that it'd be really hard as a driver to step into a coaching role because they just want to be out on the water. But I think the coaches can make such an impact. They're the seventh sailor. They're sitting on shore providing real time information. So yeah, it's tough, but I mean, we're not making the decisions. We're just talking smack.
Well, we are, but we need to sort of get a change, don't we? I think USA, any of them. If you want to make the biggest difference, you change the driver, and
Yeah.
that for me would be what you do now. I don't think that's going to happen. And maybe right now results, they talk about the journey, and I guess we need to judge it at the end of the season as to what they're getting. But it's hard to see most franchises and most business models not being about results at the end of the day, and results do the talking. But as I say, I think there's been positives and negatives for all teams. We're going to run back through it. Where we got Australia on top. Well, they're used to being on top, aren't they, at the moment? GBR in behind them in second place as well, which has been pretty good. The Spanish, they seem to be on fairly good form as well, Lisa, starting to show the signs as that as we're into the mid-season right now. Who have we got next?
Got now New Zealand, Canada, and France. So they're pushing to try get into
And
that
that's super
that
tight,
top
isn't
three.
it? That's
So
like
tight.
one point
Yeah.
between the podium.
And I think in all of the events so far this season, it's the race to the final is just gripping. We don't know what's gonna happen. The teams, until they cross the finish line, don't know who's in that final. I think that just goes to show how close each event is, but even the overall leaderboard is just neck and neck.
Yeah, neck and neck. And then we come in, so then after the French, we got the Swiss, the Italians, and the Danish. Well, I think there's been some good stories for some of the teams in there and challenging times, but I know that they'll come back fighting. And then Brazil, USA, and Germany, a lot of penalty points on those three teams, which has made it a fairly tough start to the season for them. What can they do? One more home event for the US in New York that I can't wait to see. It was a pretty spectacular event last year with a great crowd. I remember you saying it was pretty hot over there, but I'm looking forward to what we see and when we get back with it. That's kind of where we've got to so far this season. It's been nothing short of seriously exciting.
I mean, so much has happened. There's been ups and downs for all the teams, and there's so much still to come. We're five events down, as you said, New York, and then we move over to Europe. So an action-packed summer over in Europe. I'm sure we will get to talk very soon again. We get to rank everyone after a couple more of events. But I hope everyone's enjoyed the chat between Stevie and I. You can tell us what you agree with and maybe what you disagree with. It's been such an exciting season so far. I can't wait to see how it plays out. Obviously, we would love to be in Rio right now, but it's good to hear, Stevie, that all the wings are getting rebuilt, put together, and both their teams on the way. So that's it for SailGP Tiers episode 2. We'll see you in New York. The fastest race on water lands in New York City.
And the line is white. These are not your normal boats, ladies and gentlemen.
On the 7th and 8th of June, 12 teams are going to battle it out for the crown of the 5 boroughs. Grab your grandstand tickets now and come down and experience the new era of sailing.